listening to the UAE's #1 talk radio station.
This is Afternoons on Dubai Eye 103.8.
I'm Helen Farmer. Great to have you with us on the Afternoons podcast. On today's episode, inspiring real-life stories and expert advice galore. We met Talia Lazarus following a life-changing accident a few years ago. She has got back up, but how? Talking about the physical and mental barriers to a brand new life. We were addressing the headlines, HRT and dementia being linked recently. So what do we need to know? Consultant endocrinologist joining us. We had Adam, the OT, occupational therapist, talking about why being bored this summer might be good for your kids and how to teach them a little bit more responsibility, plus handwriting hacks. And it was Devon Mahadeva who was joining us to talk death and divorce, inheritance, wills, what you need to know. We all have a story to share, and I'm a firm believer that you can learn something from everyone you meet. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our next guest, because for many of us, that story to tell or that big learning comes from a turning point in our life. Sometimes it comes from tragedy or discomfort or unexpected places. A significant event that might change everything for us. And our guest at one point had her world turned upside down, but she got back up. Welcome to the show, Talia Lazarus. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you today?
I'm really well, thank you for asking. I wonder if you don't mind, take you back in time. Now, since you have created a platform and a podcast called I Got Back Up, but before we discuss that, can you please share your story and tell us a little bit about why and how your life changed back in 2021?
Of course. So it was August the 23rd, 2021, and I was in a road accident. So I lost control on an electric scooter and I hit a bus. So from that, I didn't walk for 10 weeks. Actually, a month after the accident, I had to have my first knee surgery. I was 25 years old at the time, and I remember thinking, I don't want knee surgery at 25 years old. I had to relearn how to walk, and that was definitely something. I mean, the last time we all learned how to walk, most of us at least, was when we were tiny. And we don't even remember things like that. So having to relearn to walk at the age of 25 was definitely a very strange situation. And then 6 months on, I then had to have double knee surgery. So they had to go into both of my legs. And kind of from the whole journey that I was going through, it wasn't just a physical recovery. And I think that's what a lot of people that I started to speak to felt the same thing, as it wasn't just a physical recovery. It was 100% more mental, the mental side of things, and how to get back up, but not to get back up to who I was, but to someone completely different, if that makes sense.
It does. It's a whole identity shift, isn't it? This, and having this now as part of your story. You know, a friend of mine had a terrible rock climbing accident a few years ago, and we're actually going to speak to her next week because she broke her pelvis, her legs, her feet, and much like you, didn't want that to be what defined her moving forward. And she's now just climbed the 7 volcanic summits around the world. And it's to kind of use that as going, this doesn't define me, this has happened to me, but what next? You know, what's the next chapter? How is that going to inform who I am and how I live and how I present myself and how I learn from people and what I can teach people? And I mean, it's only back in 22. It wasn't that long ago, Talia. You know, how do you feel like your mental and physical recovery is going?
You're right. It wasn't long ago at all. And I think what happens is that you almost forget you've been through it sometimes, especially when it's you know, it was physical, you know, it was my knees. I sometimes forget what's happened. And then some days, whether I'm just walking or I'm sitting or I'm training in the gym, I'm suddenly reminded by a little pain or not just a little pain. Sometimes they're a lot bigger. And I think, how am I doing now? I'm really good, thank you, and I'm in a really good place. But I think it's really important to know that, you know, for anybody that's listening, and also for myself, that, you know, you can be great one day, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be great tomorrow. And that's okay though, because it's a journey, and it's something that you kind of have to understand, that you can be in an amazing place, but it's okay if things get a bit rocky here and there. And I think that's something I had to learn, is once I started to get into a really good place physically and mentally, and then I started to get setbacks, the setbacks were destroying me. They were absolutely destroying me. I decided to run a half marathon 2 months ago.
Oh my gosh. And
So I decided within the year of my second surgery, I decided to challenge myself, and I decided to train for a half marathon within the year of my second surgery. It's crazy, I know, but I like to challenge myself in those kind of ways. And it was during that training program that I was doing is I had a setback, and I actually had to stop running for 3 weeks, and it was very close to the half marathon. And it felt like everything I'd been training for, because I'd never run further than 10 kilometers before, everything I'd been training for, everything I'd been building towards, it just went suddenly one day. And I think it was the first time I'd had a proper setback since. And I had to kind of sit back and be like, okay, this is happening for a reason. I think I just need to slow down and understand that setbacks are going to happen. How do we either, how do we destroy ourselves over the setback, or how do we kind of surrender to it and know it's going to hopefully, pass and get better?
Tell us a little bit about that mental side, coming up to 2 years ago, just 25 years old, and a time when a lot of people are, out and having fun and building their careers, and you had an enormous setback to not be able to walk for 10 weeks. It takes a very special type of determination to not fall into what could very reasonably be a clinical depression, to be honest. And that those comparison pieces and looking on Instagram about people being out and having their travels and having that time. How did you start to build that mental resilience to literally get up and start putting one foot in front of the other, Talia?
It's a really interesting question, that. And I think something I've learned a lot, and I've said to a few people, is I can understand now when things can get really dark and really tough for people, why it is so hard to take that first step, why it's sometimes easier to go the other way, let's say. Because when you do hit rock bottom, it is so comforting. It is so, it's so dark, but it's so comfortable, and it's so, you just kind of understand it and you fall into it. But it was definitely a really difficult journey, because like you said, I was 25. I had all my independence taken from me. I couldn't even get a glass of water on my own. It was a lot of things that I suddenly, that I've been taking for granted my whole life. And it was a very challenging time, like I said. And I think what happened wasn't an overnight. It wasn't, it didn't take a week or a month. It took a very long time. To be in the darkness. And I think it's okay to be in the darkness, but try not to stay there, because if you stay in there too long, it stays very dark. And there kind of comes a moment, it can be sometimes a turning point for someone, it can be a light bulb moment, or it can just be a build up of things where you just say to yourself, right, I'm fed up of feeling like this. I know I'm capable of so much more. And it's then just taking that first step. And I promise you, that first step is the hardest one to take, but it's the beginning of the rest of your life.
Back in 2021, Talia Lazarus had a life-changing accident. Came off an electric scooter, hit bus, and it was 10 weeks before she could walk again. She has not let this define her and now has a podcast and a platform called I Got Back Up. Tell us a little bit about the decision to start this. What was your mission when this idea came to you?
It's a really interesting one, because I've always wanted to help people, and kind of how it came about was it was actually during the recovery from my first surgery, when I was at home for about 2 weeks. And I started writing. I started writing about the things that I couldn't do at the time of my life that I enjoyed doing. So rock climbing, I couldn't do, I couldn't travel. There was a lot of different things. And kind of what I started to notice was that, first of all, I enjoyed writing. But then what I started to do as well was I started to talk to a few people that had been through their own journeys, and friends of mine. And then what I wanted to do was I wanted to write their stories. I thought I wanted to share their stories. So what I did was I wrote their stories, I published them, and friends and family and, other people started to read them. And they were saying to me things like, Talia, if that person can do this, this makes me want to do that, for instance, even if their stories were very different. And not just that, was that the people I was sharing the stories of were extremely grateful that I wanted to give them a voice. I wanted to share what they'd been through and help, hopefully everybody out there in the world. And I think that's when the idea suddenly came to me. It was quite like a light bulb moment. And I just thought, wait a minute, there really is something here where what I've been through, I can, with everybody else that's going through their own stories, start something new that can help so many people everywhere. And that's just kind of where it all happened. And, like everything, when you start it new, it takes a while to figure it all out. But if I fast forward about 6-7 months, that's when I launched the podcast. And that idea came to me because I realized that the stories I was writing needed to be heard. Mm-hmm. They needed to be seen, not just written. They needed to be heard and seen, because when you hear things and you see things, it's
makes it real.
It's so, of course, it's captivating. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of where it all started to come together.
Tell us about what your guests have taught you. What have some of your big takeaways been from the people that you've encountered who've been through, heartbreaking, bone-breaking often times, Talia?
I have learned so much from everybody I speak to, and that's what I love the most. I've met some of the most amazing people from all over the world, and they teach me everything in my journey of my recovery and through my healing. And one thing that I kind of resonate a lot with at the moment, and something that I learned was the phrase, "This too shall pass." Mm-hmm. So whatever you're going through today, tomorrow, last week, however long it's taking, you've been through things in the past. It might be different, but you've still been through things in the past, and you got through them, and you will get through whatever it is that you're going through today. And it's a case of just never giving up. I think that as long as you keep striving, if you keep, persevering, even if that's not one step in front of the other, even if that means some days you have to crawl. I think that's something I've learned, which is so important, is that some days you can't take a step, physically, mentally, emotionally, you can't take a leap. Sometimes all you can do that day is just crawl. And if all you can do that day is crawl, then that's absolutely fine, because that's still doing something. Mm-hmm. That's still, you're still showing up to yourself, and you're still showing up to what you believe in.
This is a hard question, and I'm sorry, but I am curious. Would you have it any other way? If you go back to August 2021 and you could prevent that accident from happening, would you?
I love that question. The answer is no, I wouldn't. And it's really an interesting one, because I thought about it. And if I could sit down with the Talia of that day, that morning, and I could say to her, you're about to have this life-changing accident, and it's going to hurt, a lot, I would tell her to do it. I would tell her to go ahead and do it. But then obviously at the time you'd think to yourself, oh, I'm not going to have an accident if I'm going to have an accident. So no, I wouldn't tell her, because I would want her to go and do it.
For anyone that wants to find you and the amazing people that you speak to, what's the best way of getting in touch?
So on social media, you can find us on all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and also LinkedIn. You can find, and TikTok, at I Got Back Up. And also, if you want to get in touch with me, because I'm always open to speaking to absolutely anybody, then you can reach me as well on Talia Lazarus on social media. And then our website is www.igotbackup.net.
Thank you so much for your time. Really, really incredible to hear what you've been through. And as I said, not letting that define you. It's been incredible. Talia, thank you so much for your time. Wishing you a wonderful, wonderful afternoon ahead. Talia Lazarus. If you want details, you can just send me the words "got back up." I'd be very happy to send you her social media so you can find out more.